Hey guys, and welcome back to another Tech Tutorial Tuesday, the series where you guys ask the questions and I do my best to answer them as quickly and efficiently as possible. And today I wanted to take a look at a brand new feature within Home Assistant, and that is the Automation Debugging feature. Have you ever been walking around your house and a light suddenly turns on when it wasn't meant to, or a light goes off when it wasn't meant to, just weird things happening, and you're like, why are all of these automations running? Well, that's where the brand new Automation Debugging feature comes into play. It essentially allows you to deep dive your automations, see what triggers caused an automation to run, what conditions were evaluated, which ones are true and false, and what actions were carried out. And it allows you to see a detailed timeline of events of all of those things happening. So that is the feature that we're going to take a look at today, and that is the Automation Debugging feature. If you like this video, make sure to drop it a like and get subscribed if you aren't already. And if you want your question answered in the next Tech Tutorial Tuesday, make sure to leave it in the comments down below, and you never know, I might just answer it. So as mentioned, this is a brand new feature in the latest Home Assistant 2021.4 release. So you'll need to make sure that you are on that update at least if you want to be able to use this function. And this is a feature that I've been wanting for a very long time. I think it's very useful. I think everyone should use it, or at least know how to use it, especially if you're using Home Assistant automations. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about this update. I really have been looking forward to this for a while, so I'm glad to see it finally in the latest version. So yeah, if you want to be able to use this feature, make sure you are on at least version 2021.4 or greater. And with that said, let's jump into Home Assistant. Alright, so first things first, you're going to want to head over into Home Assistant, and there are a couple of ways to access the Automation Debugging feature. The first one is if you head over into Logbook, and you'll see a list of all your changing devices, etc. If you scroll down, you will see when an automation was triggered, and you'll see this little Show Trace button. You can either click on that, and that will take you into the new Automation Debugging feature, or you can head into your automations like so, find your automations, we'll find the one I want, which is Office. The Lights On Office demo is the one I'm going to be working on today, and you'll notice on the right hand side you'll have this new little clock button. So if you click on that, and that takes you back into the Automation Debugging feature. And so once you land at the Automation Trace screen, this is the kind of thing you can expect to see. Obviously, depending on the type of automation or how complicated your automation is, your screen is obviously going to vary from mine. But if we go through we'll just do a brief overview, and then we'll go through and we're going to create some automations, sort of build them up, and I'll show you the traces of that automation as we go along. So if we look on the left hand side, so let's just get rid of that sidebar. So on the left hand side, you'll see we have sort of our visual flow diagram of the automation, and this is basically a visual representation of the exact flow that the automation took to run, as well as all the conditions and the actions if you have multiple actions. So you can see at the top we have our trigger, our condition in the middle, and then our action down here. And the yellow or the gold path is the path that automation took and the steps that it executed. If you see the white lines that aren't colored in yellow, those are perhaps conditions or different actions attached to that automation that are present in the automation but didn't run. And they will give you a bit more information. You'll see in a minute as we go through that it'll become a bit more clear about what those do. And you can click on each of the icons at each stage, and that will change the information on the right hand side. So if we click back up here, and then in the middle we have our step details. So the step details is the current step that you are on, and if you click into each of these steps, you'll see it changes and it gives you different information about each step. We'll come back to that in just a minute. If we click on Trace Timeline, this is essentially another view of this this sort of chart on the left hand side. So this is basically every step that it took to execute your automation. You can click into each one to go through them, And then you can click back onto the step details and that will change the information here. If you click over into related logbook entries, these are basically any entities that are related to this automation. So if an entity changes state because of this automation and it is listed in the logbook, you'll see that appear here. Finally, we have the automation config, and this is your YAML config of your automation. So you can this is the full code of your automation basically. So you can go through, look at the code and see if it sort of matches up with what you were expecting to see. In the top, you'll have this drop down and the automation debugging feature. I haven't confirmed this, but it seems to store the last 5 automation traces. So you can go back and view up to 5 traces of the same automation, and each automation will save up to 5 traces. You can click this arrow to go back through them as well. So it looks like that, and go forward. You can also use the drop down to go back and forth also. You also, on the right hand side, you have a refresh button, and you can also download the JSON file if you so desire, and you can save that into a location of your choice just for safekeeping. This might look a little complicated for just now, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new automation, and we'll build it up slowly until it looks a little bit like this. And so we're going to be using these motion sensors. We're over here. We're going to be using these motion sensors over here. We'll go through, create a basic automation and sort of build it up to be a more complicated one, and I'll show you the traces as we go along. So let's go ahead and create a new automation, and we're just going to call this debug demo. As my trigger, I'm going to use the state of my motion sensor over here, which is called office motion. We're going to set that. We're going to change the state from, we're just going to leave from off. We're going to set on. Then from there, I'm just going to skip. I'm not going to add a condition for this automation. We're just going to keep it really basic. And in my device, in my action, sorry, I'm going to call service, change it to light, turn on. And we're going to trigger my office light, just that one. If I now save that automation and then trigger it, if we head back into automation and then search for debug, and then we click on the little clock icon on the right hand side, and you'll see we now have a very basic looking automation trace. So it's only got 2 steps, one for trigger and one for action, but we'll go through and we'll build it up just in a little while. So in my trigger, so that's the very first step, we click on step details. We can also click on trace timeline and you'll see the exact process. So triggered by the state of my office motion sensor, it did the call service light turn on, and it turned on my office light. You'll see that here, and then it finished. And the nice thing is it gives you a runtime of how long the automation took from start to finish to complete, which I actually really appreciate. So once we go back, if we click back into step details, you'll see if I click on my trigger, it's not obvious that I'm clicking on the icons. I think they could improve on that just a little bit so you know exactly which one you've selected, but I'm clicking on the trigger at the top left, and you'll see that my state is binary sensor motion. Change that to on, or when that changes to on, sorry. And if we click into changed variables, you'll see it does look a little bit confusing, but if we just focus on the from state and the to state, there is a little bit more information than we actually need in here, but you'll get used to reading these as you get used to this function. So if you see here, we have a from state, and that gives us all of the information that was in our binary sensor or our motion sensor originally, and you'll see that it did have a state of off. And then under the to state, we have a state of on. So that was it changing from off to on, and that's what triggered our automation to run. Then if we click on the action icon, again, you'll see in the step config what the exact step did. So we have light.turn on, and then our target and our device ID. You'll also see if we click into change variables, there won't be an awful lot to see in there. And then if we click into related logbook entries, you'll see that our office light was turned on by the debug demo. If I click on the drop down, there won't be much to see because obviously we just created this automation once. It hasn't ran multiple times yet, but as we go through and trigger this automation more, we will get more options to choose from there. So let's go back into our automation and make it just a little bit more complicated. So if we click on the pencil button, that takes us straight into the automation where we can again configure it to be a little bit more complicated. So let's add a condition into this one. So I want to do a condition of, so let's add a condition, choose our state. Sorry, let's do numeric state because I want to do based on the light level. So for this one, I'm going to choose above 10. You probably wouldn't do this. So yeah, this whole automation I'm going to make probably doesn't make sense, but you get the idea for demonstration purposes. So let's add a condition of above 10, and let's also add a secondary action. And this time I'm going to add a wait into the script. So we'll pause it for say 10 seconds or so. So let's do a delay let's do 5 seconds. 5 seconds, and then we're going to do another action, and that is going to be to turn the light back off. So let's do turn off. Once again, let's select our device. This time I'm going to choose an entity because that will make a little bit more sense. So we'll do office light. Again, I'm going to change the top one to entity so that it doesn't give you that unique ID. And let's go ahead and save that. So this time we have our trigger is going to be on the motion sensor being on. And then we're going to do a condition of the light level being above 10 lux. And then we're going to call our light to turn on, wait 5 seconds, and then turn our light back off again. So let's hit the save button on there. And if we head back into our trace again, so click on the little clock on the right hand side, and this time we have a little bit more advanced looking debug. So this time, if we click on the trigger at the top, you'll see that we now have this A/B icon, and that represents a condition. And you'll see this time that we have another little path or trace coming off of our condition, the A/B, and it's grayed out. It's not in yellow, meaning that that condition did not run. And if we click on that condition, you'll see that that condition was successfully met. So yeah, the cross means that the condition was met, if that makes sense. And then let's very quickly go through. So if we click into our trace timeline, you'll see it was triggered by the motion. It did a numeric state on the condition, that all evaluated to true. Then the office light was turned on. Then there was a delay for 5 seconds. 5 seconds later, the light was turned off. And you'll see that the whole automation took 5.46 seconds to run, including that 5-second delay. If we click back over into the step details, let's very quickly go through these. So we have our trigger state on. Our condition was next, that was the numeric state above 10. Remember I put that in. And then if we click into our action, so there are light.turn on, our entity ID was light.office. Then we have our delay, which is indicated by the little timer icon, and that was a delay of 5 seconds. And then finally we have our light.turn off. And again, we can sanity check that. If we go into our automation condition, you'll see that it is exactly as we expected it to be. Now that we've ran this a couple of times, I've ran this a couple of times, you'll see that our drop down now has more options to choose from, and we can go back and select each one. So I can go back to that very first one I created, in that very basic one, so you'll see that that is now listed, and we can also jump ahead to the more recent ones. So that is a very useful feature to be able to go back and view older automations if you're sort of changing things as you go and trying to figure out why things aren't working. Let's do one final example, which is a bit more complicated, and we're going to use some choices in the actions. So if I click on my pencil button again, that'll bring us back into the automation editor. And then if I scroll down, this time I'm going to remove the condition from this one, so I want to completely delete that condition. We're going to leave the condition out for this, and I'm going to get rid of all of my actions. So if we delete all of these, so right now we only have a trigger, a basic trigger of our motion sensor going from off to on, and then in the action I want to do 3 different choices. So those actions, I'm going to create an action, and in the drop down, I'm going to choose the choose icon, and that's going to give us a couple of options to choose from. So in option 1, I'm going to add a condition, and that is going to be on the numeric state, and I'm going to choose the office light level once again. So if we select that, and I want this action to be run when the light level is above 25 but below 100. And then the action for that is I'm going to change my light or turn on my light at a set brightness. So I'm going to choose office light. No, I'm not. I'm going to do light.turn on. Getting carried away. Then we're going to select our office light. And this time in the for the brightness, I'm going to set the brightness to be maybe, let's say 50%. As the next option, I'm going to do another add option, and we're going to do add a condition, and we're going to do the exact same. Obviously, this is another pointless automation. You probably wouldn't ever do this, but you get the idea of it for demonstration purposes. So in this second option, I'm going to do my office light level again. And this time I'm going to say that if it's below 25, This time I'm going to say if it's below 25, then I want my light to come on again. So we're going to do call service. Select my office light again. And this time we're going to set the brightness percentage to be a full brightness, so 100% brightness. Finally, I'm going to do one more option. That's going to be option number 3, and again we're going to do numeric state of our office light level, and that's going to be the one for above 100. Add our final action, actually not our final action, so it's going to be light turn on again. Pick my office light, set the brightness down, so the brightness percentage, maybe 10% or 20% because it's much brighter, so maybe I want the light to come on at less brightness. Finally, we add a default action, and the default action for a choose automation is what action to do if none of those other conditions are met. So again, call service, I'm going to do light.turn on, and we're going to do 100% brightness. And again, we're going to set this to 100% brightness, just for if some reason all of our conditions fail, it's safer to put the light on at 100 and be able to see what you're doing rather than not. So let's save that, and then we're going to trigger our automation once again. So if I hop back into the trace, the latest trace, you'll see it looks a little bit different to what we had earlier on. So we have a trigger up at here. Again, this is our standard trigger that we've been doing. And you'll see our action has this little fork in the road type thing. And that indicates that it was a choice action that was in the automation. And you'll see that it has 4 actions or 4 paths, 4 distinct paths. And the 4 are the option 1, option 2, option 3, and then remember we had that default option that the automation will take if no other condition was met. So we have our 3 that have these little squares, one has a tick in it, and then we have this one at the end, which is our default action. And you'll see there that that path just goes straight to that one. So you'll see it took option number 1, and if we click into that, you'll see that our the result of that was true, so that was the option that was chosen. If we click into the others, you'll see that it says this node was not executed and so no further trace information is available. So that's because that option wasn't chosen. So if we click back into the first one, you'll see that the result was true, and that's because that condition was met. And you'll see that it was above 25, below 100. And again, we can get a breakdown of that step. You'll see that it was the above 25 and below 100 condition, and our brightness was set to 50%. We can also see the action again of that particular step. So light turned on, 50%. And again, we can click into the related logbook entries, get that full information. If we click back into trace timeline, you'll see that we get the full breakdown, and it tells us that choice number 0, or the very first choice, computers count from 0, was the one that was executed. And we can click into all of those and see the sort of breakdown. You'll see that it took 0.13 seconds to execute. I really like having that execution time. It's very handy for sort of debugging where your automations are sort of taking a long time to execute. So yeah, big fan of that feature. And again, you'll see here in the drop down, we can go back and choose all of the previous ones that we've created up to the last 5. So yeah, it seems to store the last 5 runs, or the last 5 automation debugs. I don't know if there's a way to store more. If you know how to store more, then do let me know. That'd be quite interesting, maybe to store 10 or something. But yeah, you can, at the moment, you can view up to the last 5 automation debugs, which is a very useful feature. Oh, before we go, one very last quick feature I wanted to talk about, which I think is important, is the data analytics feature. If you go over into configuration and then scroll down into general and then scroll down again from there, you'll see that we have the new analytics feature. And this essentially, this is an opt-in feature that is again in the latest 2021.4, and I would definitely consider turning this on if you are comfortable with doing so. Again, it's an opt-in feature, so don't worry, it's not turned on by default, but I would consider turning it on if you can do so, because this is going to really help out the Home Assistant project. And essentially this is a really important feature of Home Assistant going forward, because they can use these statistics and analytics to approach manufacturers and say, hey, we have 20,000 users using your product, so please do not break the functionality, and please consider adding local functionality into your product. This is really going to help Home Assistant convince manufacturers that they are a serious contender in the smart home game. And of course, we all want to see Home Assistant get better and better, and more manufacturers get on board with Home Assistant. So yeah, if you can, if you don't mind doing so and you're happy, then I would please urge you to enable analytics in the new 2021.4 update. Again, this is an opt-in feature, so don't worry, this isn't turned on by default. You can also view all of the analytics at analytics.homeassistant.io, and this is what that website looks like. It's actually really cool. It's quite interesting to actually look through and see how many people are using a particular integration. So it'll give you the total number of installs. So this update has only been out for a couple of days, and there's already 11,500 installs already active. So that is very impressive. It gives you kind of the scale of the project, and this is only going to continue to grow as more and more people update to the latest version. It'll also give you a breakdown of country, what version, the operating system, or what type of installation that they have. And if we head back up into integrations, you can see how many people are using a particular integration. So we have MQTT, so we can see currently there are 6,000 people using MQTT, 5,500 using Google Cast, 3200 using the system monitoring integration. So yeah, it's a really handy feature for the Home Assistant project and the Home Assistant developers to be able to get more manufacturers on board with Home Assistant. So please do enable the analytics feature if you are comfortable with doing so. And there we go, that is a look at the brand new automation debugging feature within Home Assistant. And we took a look at 3 different examples, from a very basic example of an automation to a little bit more advanced. And obviously there are far more advanced and complex automations that you can do. And this is where that automation debugging feature is really going to come into effect. When you've got an extremely complicated automation and things aren't quite working out as you would like them to, that is where the automation debugging feature is really going to shine. But anyways, that is about all the time we have for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it was useful. Hopefully you learned something about the new automation debugging feature. If you like this video, make sure to drop it a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a patron on Patreon, and your support allows me to keep on making these videos. Thank you to all my current Patreon supporters. As always, your support is greatly appreciated. Make sure to leave your comments for the next Tech Tutorial Tuesday in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.